Have you ever felt like there's more to your mind than meets the eye? That lurking beyond the surface of your thoughts lies a vast expanse waiting to be explored? To find the edge of your mental reality is to embark upon a journey of self-discovery, a quest to unravel the mysteries that lie beyond the confines of ordinary perception. But did you know that mental biases imposed on us by society and our evolution limit us from going beyond our mental reality? We can start going beyond after we deconstruct every one of these filters. So heed the call to venture into the depths of your being, as it's time to confront the limitations of your mind and to transcend the boundaries that define your existence. The limits of perception. The first step towards finding the edge of our mental reality involves understanding that there's a limit to it in the first place. The human brain is an incredible system capable of processing massive amounts of information and stimuli, but it's not perfect by any means. For all its brilliance, the brain is not infallible. Our senses, too, are fallible instruments, providing us with only a partial glimpse of the world around us. We see but a fraction of the electromagnetic spectrum, hear but a limited range of frequencies, and touch but a fraction of the textures that surround us. One philosopher who has delved deeply into the implications of these perceptual limitations is Immanuel Kant. In his seminal work Critique of Pure Reason, Kant argues that our understanding of the world is not only constrained by the physical limits of our senses but also shaped by the innate structures of our mind. According to Kant, we do not experience the world directly. Rather, we perceive it through a framework of time, space, and causality, which he calls the categories of understanding. These are not features of the world itself, but of our perception of it. Thus, our mind is subject to biases, distortions, and cognitive shortcuts that shape our perception of reality. But then, how did we allow them to seize control over our perception? Cognitive biases filter the mind. We must recognize that our perception of reality is inherently subjective, shaped by the unique interplay of biological, psychological, and environmental factors. What we perceive as reality is but a construct of our minds, a representation of the world as filtered through the imperfect lens of our senses and cognition. In pondering the limitations of our cognition and the impact of cognitive biases, the ideas of the philosopher Daniel Dennett prove illuminating. Dennett, a prominent American philosopher and cognitive scientist, has extensively explored how our minds shape our understanding of the world. He suggests that our brains are like computers, processing information through complex algorithms, albeit imperfectly. According to Dennett, much of what we perceive as conscious thought is actually the result of unconscious processes and pre-programmed responses, a notion that aligns with the cognitive biases we must navigate. Dennett introduces the concept of the intentional stance, which is a strategy for predicting the behavior of entities, whether they are living organisms, parts of organisms, or even machines, by treating them as if they were rational agents with beliefs, desires, and rational acumen tailored to their circumstances. This approach helps us understand how our cognitive biases might lead us astray by assigning agency and intent where none exists, thus distorting our perception of reality. Drawing from Dennett's insights, we can see that our cognitive biases are not merely errors in our thinking, but are instead deeply ingrained mechanisms by which our minds simplify and manage the vast amounts of information we encounter. You see, even as we acknowledge the limitations of our perception, we must not despair. It is through this recognition that we gain the humility to question our assumptions, challenge our preconceptions, and embark upon a journey of self-discovery. In the face of uncertainty, we find the seeds of curiosity. In the recognition of our limitations, we find the impetus to expand our consciousness and explore the unknown. And so, let us embrace the limits of our perception not as obstacles but as invitations to venture beyond the edges of our mental reality and into the vast expanse of the infinite. We need to be aware of these limits before we deconstruct them, so why not start with the most common of them all? The confirmation bias. The confirmation bias. Imagine our early ancestors scanning the savanna for signs of danger. In the face of ambiguity, they relied on heuristics, mental shortcuts, to make rapid judgments, trusting familiar patterns and discarding conflicting information. All of the biases that we'll examine today come from these beginnings. So, our ancestors sought out information that confirmed their pre-existing beliefs while ignoring evidence to the contrary, which helped them navigate a world filled with uncertainty and unpredictability. This is the confirmation bias, one of the edges of our mental reality. But while it served its purpose back in more dangerous eras, in the present day, all it does is heighten the insidious effect of misinformation in our society. In our modern era, where the dangers of the savannah have been replaced by the complexities of the digital age, confirmation bias exerts a different kind of influence. No longer do we face the immediate threats of predators lurking in the shadows. Instead, we grapple with the subtler dangers of social engineering and disinformation. More than a helpful mental shortcut, the confirmation bias now became a double-edged sword. On one hand, it provides us with a sense of certainty and security, reinforcing our beliefs and shielding us from the headaches of conflicting information. Yet, on the other hand, it blinds us to alternative perspectives, trapping us in echo chambers of our own making and amplifying the effects of misinformation. Consider the echo chambers of social media, where algorithms curate our news feeds based on our past behaviors and preferences, reinforcing our existing beliefs and shielding us from dissenting viewpoints. In this digital landscape, confirmation bias is not just a survival mechanism. It is a potent force that shapes our perceptions, influences our decisions, and exacerbates the spread of misinformation. This is the first roadblock we have towards reaching the limit of our mental reality. How do we break free from the confirmation bias? Only by challenging our assumptions and embracing the discomfort of cognitive dissonance can we hope to transcend the limitations of our perception and awaken to the boundless possibilities that lie beyond. Consider the teachings of the philosopher Montaigne, a French thinker who lived in the 16th century. He encouraged individuals to engage in self-examination, questioning their beliefs and prejudices with honesty and humility. By cultivating a mindset of skepticism and curiosity, Montaigne believed one could overcome the narrow confines of the confirmation bias and embrace a more nuanced understanding of the world. But modern psychology provides an even more interesting point of view on this situation. The famous study conducted by Leon Festinger and his colleagues on cognitive dissonance sheds light on how individuals reconcile conflicting beliefs. When faced with evidence that contradicts their existing beliefs, people often experience discomfort, known as cognitive dissonance. To alleviate this discomfort, they may either reject the conflicting evidence or modify their beliefs to accommodate it. The smart thing to do here is to observe all of the times when we're presented with conflicting information and examine our reactions so we can become aware of this tendency. Only through this way can we consciously challenge our confirmation bias and strive for greater intellectual honesty. As insignificant as it might seem to us, a society limited by its mental reality is doomed to fail. Without challenging the edges of our minds, our progress will stagnate permanently. Let's take a look at world history to witness one of the best examples of this happening. The scientific revolution of the 17th century, when thinkers such as Galileo Galilei challenged prevailing beliefs about the nature of the universe through empirical observation and rigorous experimentation. These pioneers overturned long-held assumptions and expanded the boundaries of human knowledge. Their willingness to question authority and follow the evidence wherever it leads serves as a powerful example of how confirmation bias can be overcome through rational inquiry and open-mindedness. Ultimately, breaking free from confirmation bias requires a willingness to confront our limitations and embrace the uncertainty of the unknown. By drawing on the wisdom of philosophers, mystics, and psychologists from diverse traditions, we can cultivate a more nuanced understanding of reality and open ourselves to the infinite possibilities that lie beyond the confines of our mental biases. While the confirmation bias is the base for all other biases, it's not the most negative one. Others also influence our thoughts in ways we can't imagine until we're made aware of them. The anchoring bias. The anchoring bias, in particular, manifests when we encounter an initial piece of information, an anchor, and unconsciously allow it to heavily influence our subsequent judgments or decisions. Consider a scenario where you are negotiating the price of a car. The salesperson opens with a high asking price, anchoring your perception of what constitutes a reasonable offer. Even if you know the initial price is inflated, it can still exert a powerful influence on your subsequent negotiations, causing you to adjust your expectations accordingly. In evolutionary terms, anchoring likely evolved as a way to conserve cognitive resources and facilitate rapid decision-making in uncertain situations. By anchoring our judgments to a familiar reference point, our ancestors could make quick assessments of risk and reward without expending unnecessary mental energy. However, when the anchor is misleading or irrelevant, it can distort our perceptions and cloud our judgment, causing us to make decisions that are not in our best interest. The selective exposure bias. Even more insidious than these is a subtle force, a whisper that guides our thoughts, shapes our beliefs, and colors our perceptions. Can you imagine what sort of bias can force us to discriminate or harass others? It is the bias of selective exposure, a silent companion that leads us down familiar paths while shielding us from the unknown. This bias, rooted deep within our psyche, has its origins in our primal urge for certainty and security. Like the ancient tribes who sought refuge in familiar caves or the sailors who navigated by the stars, we are drawn to sources of information that confirm our preconceived notions and shield us from the discomfort of uncertainty. This is what leads to violence because we ostracize those who are too different from us by selectively exposing ourselves only to what we know. But in our quest for security, we risk becoming prisoners of our perceptions, trapped within echo chambers of our own making. Like the villagers in the parable of the blind men and the elephant, we grasp only a fragment of reality, clinging stubbornly to our narrow viewpoints while dismissing alternative perspectives. Yet, there is hope amidst the shadows of our biases. In the teachings of the Stoic philosophers, who urged us to cultivate inner resilience and embrace the uncertainties of life, we find a beacon of wisdom. In the Eastern tradition of mindfulness meditation, which invites us to observe our thoughts with curiosity and compassion, we discover a pathway to liberation from the shackles of our minds. As we embark upon this journey of self-discovery, let us heed the call to venture beyond the confines of our comfort zone. Let us dare to explore the unknown, seek out diverse perspectives, and embrace the richness of experience that lies beyond the walls of our biases. In addition to acceptance, we must cultivate trust in ourselves, in others, and in the universe at large. Trusting in the inherent wisdom of life allows us to relinquish the need for control and surrender to the flow of existence, knowing that we are supported and guided every step of the way. On top of that, we must cultivate resilience, the ability to adapt and thrive in the face of adversity. By letting go of our attachment to specific outcomes and remaining open to the possibilities that arise, we can navigate life's challenges with grace and resilience. The conformity bias. Even deeper below into the confines of our minds, we find a far worse bias, possibly the worst of them all. This one threatens to control groups of people rather than just individuals. Ready to learn what it's called? It's the conformity bias. Consider the saying, "When in Rome, do as the Romans." This adage encapsulates the pressure to conform to the norms and expectations of a particular group or culture, even if those norms conflict with our personal beliefs or values. Similarly, the proverb, "The nail that sticks up will be hammered down," underscores the fear of standing out or expressing dissenting opinions in a group setting. The influence of the conformity bias is a powerful force that shapes not only our individual decisions but also the collective consciousness of society as a whole. While the conformity bias may seem harmless in situations like choosing a restaurant or movie, its effects can be far more insidious when taken to the extreme. Groupthink, a phenomenon fueled by the desire for harmony and cohesion within a group, can lead to the suppression of dissenting opinions and the stifling of individual creativity and independent thinking. In the grip of groupthink, dissenting thoughts become labeled as disruptive or even dangerous, leading individuals to self-censor to maintain the illusion of unanimity. As a result, innovation is stifled, critical thinking is suppressed, and the collective intelligence of the group is compromised. In this corrupted mindscape, misinformation can spread unchecked, prejudices can go unchallenged, and injustices can perpetuate. To overcome the conformity bias and guard against the pitfalls of groupthink, we must cultivate a culture of open-mindedness, diversity, and inclusion. We must obtain the courage to express our desires and perspectives, to challenge the status quo, even if it means disrupting the harmony of the group. Polishing our minds. Now, with a mind aware of the filters that prevent it from witnessing reality, it's time to prepare to go beyond. A new journey beckons, one of preparation and readiness to transcend the confines of our mental biases. Imagine standing at the threshold of a vast and uncharted landscape, the horizon stretching out before you in all its mystery and wonder. Yet, before you can embark upon this journey of exploration, there is work to be done. Preparation that goes beyond mere physical readiness. Stoicism invites us to fortify our minds against the onslaught of external influences, to develop an inner strength that is impervious to the whims of fate. One of the most crucial steps in our journey is to confront the truth, even when it challenges our deeply held beliefs or goes against the consensus of the group. It also teaches us to focus on what is within our power, the choices we make and the attitudes we cultivate, while relinquishing attachment to outcomes beyond our influence. For in the grand tapestry of existence, there are forces at play far beyond our comprehension or command. Socrates famously declared that the unexamined life is not worth living. We find inspiration to seek truth through self-examination and critical inquiry. Socrates encouraged his followers to question everything, to interrogate their own beliefs and assumptions in pursuit of a deeper understanding of reality. But to polish the edges of our mental reality, we must be willing to face the truth head-on, no matter how uncomfortable or inconvenient it may be. This requires a commitment to honesty, both with ourselves and with others, and a willingness to challenge our assumptions and biases. We must be willing to challenge the status quo, to question authority, and to stand up for what we believe to be right. We must cultivate the courage to speak truth to power, even when doing so may come at great personal cost. The fallacy of control. But preparation is not merely a matter of mental fortitude. It also requires a willingness to let go of the familiar and embrace the unknown. In the teachings of the Taoist sage Laozi, who spoke of the importance of embracing the natural flow of life, we find wisdom in surrendering to the uncertainties of existence and trusting in the unfolding of the universe. This is key to dismantling the fallacy of control, a pervasive illusion that often holds sway over our minds and hearts. And in the stories of the mystics, who spoke of surrendering the ego and merging with the divine, we find a profound lesson in humility. It is only when we release our grip on the illusion of control that we can truly open ourselves to the infinite possibilities that lie beyond our mental reality. Finally, we must cultivate gratitude, the recognition of the blessings that surround us and the acknowledgement of the interconnectedness of all beings. By cultivating an attitude of gratitude, we can shift our focus away from what we cannot control and towards the abundance that already exists in our lives. But what if polishing our minds and letting go of control is too difficult for us? What other alternatives do we have to transcend the limits of our mental reality? Listen closely, for your most powerful ally in this quest is closer to you than you might think. It's the natural world. The natural world. Spending time in nature has long been recognized as a potent remedy for the stresses and strains of modern life, offering solace, rejuvenation, and a deeper connection to something greater than ourselves. Basking in its presence for long enough increases our mental resilience. In the teachings of indigenous cultures around the world, we find reverence for the natural world and recognition of its importance in maintaining balance and harmony within the human psyche. For centuries, indigenous peoples have turned to the land for sustenance, healing, and spiritual renewal, understanding that our connection to nature is fundamental to our well-being. Other philosophers also agree with this. In the philosophy of transcendentalism, popularized by thinkers like Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry David Thoreau, we find a celebration of nature as a source of inspiration, wisdom, and renewal. Thoreau, in his seminal work Walden, extolled the virtues of simple living in harmony with nature, urging his readers to simplify, and find solace in the rhythms of the natural world. Here, amidst the rustle of leaves and the symphony of bird songs, we are reminded of the cyclical nature of life, where endings give way to new beginnings, and every moment holds the promise of renewal, a concept that can polish even the most reluctant mind. So, as we journey towards the edge of our mental reality and beyond, let us not only seek solace and healing in the embrace of nature, but also wisdom and guidance. As we strive to reach the edge of our mental reality and venture beyond, mental resilience emerges as a crucial companion on our journey, a steadfast ally that empowers us to navigate the challenges and uncertainties that lie ahead. In the face of uncertainty and upheaval, mental resilience empowers us to embrace change as an opportunity for growth, to adapt to new circumstances with flexibility and openness, and to emerge from adversity stronger, wiser, and more resilient than before.